Hey, hope you're well. Wanted to do a quick video on the rules for content creators in Canadian national parks. Now, this is recently kicked up in the United States, so I thought it would be worth looking at what Canada's rules are and make a video sort of setting out the lay of the land. And my interest in this, basically, just so you know, is from the perspective of someone that's heavy into stock photography. So being someone that lives in the area, lives in Canada, and creates content in the national parks, thought it was valuable to at least understand and want to share that back with you. So if it feels like some of these rules are ambiguous and a little hard to understand, that's, don't shoot the messenger. The rules are ambiguous. They're sometimes a little confusing, sometimes a little onerous, and to a certain extent, probably not something that's super great, but they're the rules. So let's just jump right into them and go through them. Okay, so basically there are 4 categories of potential content creators for videographers and photographers. These 4 categories are small scale travel, media, film, and photo projects, small scale. Commercial film and photography permits, so bigger commercial type activities. Then third is professional photography and videography, and that includes weddings. And use of unmanned aerial vehicles or drones. Let's start with the last category, drones, because that's the easiest to go through. Basically, the rules here are straightforward. Even for sub 250 gram drones, Parks Canada does not allow the use of drones in any national park sites, including in the sort of big parks, but as well as the smaller facility type park sites. So you can't use it at all. There are a few technical rules, I guess, if you're working for Parks Canada or you're the police or something like that. But for general visitors that are creating content, drones are not allowed. Okay, so now let's just jump back to that first category, which was small scale travel and media, film and photo projects. So we're talking about videography and photography here. Small scale projects registration is for small travel media crews that wish to film or take photos in Parks Canada locations. Travel media includes journalists, freelancers, photographers, videographers, bloggers, and social media influencers. So it's a media type category, but it extends broadly to all kinds of creators that work with social media. So that's good. And if you're one of these people, the basic rules are that you need to register your project 15 business days in advance. So that's basically 3 weeks. Person days, so 3 weeks. And that's, they recommend that you do that as a minimum. So it's possible that 3 week cutoff line is not going to work if you, or if they're busy or whatever, you might have to register earlier. And so that's hugely problematic for a lot of people to engage in a kind of registration process like that, just for creating content. Especially if you're local and you just drive up on weekends, it's pretty tough requirement to comply with. But there's actually 2 parts to this. So it's the travel media, but it's also the small projects. So it's helpful to know what a small project is, because you have to be travel media and you have to be engaged in the small project activity. So let's go through that real quick. There are 6 criteria that you have to meet in order to have a small project underway. And these are criteria. So it's not good enough to be one. You have to fit each of these 6 criteria for your project to fall under the small projects label. So it's a pretty onerous set of requirements to fall within this social media small projects category. Here's what they are. First, it has to be intended to inform audiences about the works of Park Canada or promote visitation to Parks Canada places. So basically, you're going to have to be doing PR for Parks Canada. I don't totally understand what Works of Parks Canada or promoting visitation means, but it seems like PR to me. You can make your own judgment there. The second thing is that crew size is 6 people or fewer. That seems clear, but don't go in a big group, I guess. Lots of us that go to the parks hiking, we often will go in a group larger than a couple of people, so be careful, be wary of that. 3, the equipment has to be limited to cameras, tripods, microphones, or other handheld equipment. So basically what that means is that your equipment has to be fairly minimal, and that, I think that makes sense, so you're not, bringing in big rigs that are on trucks or anything like that, dollies or that kind of thing. So you're pretty much going handheld through the process. 4, the activities have to remain in areas open to the public and during normal operating hours only. So yeah, I guess in the big parks, you have to stay within areas that are open to the public, which is most of them. With respect to sites, Parks Canada does administer lots of historic sites, and for the most part, I guess you'll have to stay well in operating hours. I don't think you'd break in anyway, so that one kind of makes sense. Okay, 5. Filming methods used and final product have to adhere to laws and regulations. Not entirely sure what that means, but things that might come into play are issues like privacy laws. So sometimes there are rules around photographing people in your images. I think potentially endangered wildlife issues might come into play if you're interfering with wildlife or feeding animals in order to get shots or video. That stuff's not allowed. So I can kind of see where they're coming from with those rules, despite the sort of lack of ambiguity there. But things like feeding animals to get photos and videos, that is an issue in the parks. So, and it's just not a good thing to do anyway, notwithstanding these rules. And the sixth point here is no drones or UAVs. Basically going back to the first thing we talked about. If you're using a drone or you're hoping to use a drone, then you're not going to fall within this small project category, and you're going to be looking at something else moving forward. So that's the social media kind of influencer / YouTuber / TikToker category. So the good news is that it's not banned outright. The bad news is that you get some bureaucratic issues to overcome. The ambiguity of the rules plus the registration period, that's going to cause some headaches. One thing I didn't mention about the registration is it doesn't include a fee. It is free. You just have to register and let them know, and then they'll confirm whether they've accepted that registration as falling within the scope of that exemption or that set of rules to the park. So no fees, no insurance, no complications on that front, but 15 days is onerous. Anyway, so let's say that you're not a social media type or a travel media type, and you're not doing a small project. The next category of rules that you might fall under are the commercial film and photography permits. So basically what that is that all commercial filming and photography activities require a permit. These activities include feature and short films, documentaries, television series, marketing, including styled photo shoots and other projects with a commercial intent that do not qualify as travel media, small-scale registrations. So I think basically what that category is trying to get to is that if you're filming the next Marvel movie about Wolverine, or you're doing a car commercial, or you're doing photography shoots for Vogue magazine or whatever, then those things fall within the commercial film and photography permit area. So you actually need a permit to do that. It's a pretty significant process. It's light years between the commercial and the media travel categories. You have also the 15-day requirement to register for your permit or to apply for the permit. There's the permit application is on the website. You can scroll through it and look at all the detail that's required. It's fairly detailed. This all includes your insurance requirements and your obligation to make sure Parks Canada is an additional insured per occurrence. This is all for this is all for a real sort of business, like a full-scale business. So I assume that a lot of these things wouldn't be an issue. Where it would become an issue is that if you are a small creator and you, for some reason, don't fall within that small travel category, then it's almost impossible to become or to meet the requirements of these commercial film permit processes. And of course, these permits cost money. So there's a schedule of fees at the end that shows you what you're required to do in order to do certain things. So that's commercial and photography permits. So yeah, I think that's going to be a fairly small set of people that are doing commercial shoots in the park. Where you may have a larger group, sort of maybe the second largest group after the social media, sort of travel media types, is with the professional photography and videography, including weddings. Banff is hugely popular for weddings. I assume Jasper and some of the other parks are as well, but Banff is super popular. Plus, the parks are increasingly popular for landscape photographers and wildlife photographers and all those types of people, many of whom sell images. So let's get into this one. Basically, there are 4 categories listed: wedding photography and videography, which I just discussed; wildlife, nature, and landscape photography; stock photo or video capture. Stock photo and video is what I do. Or if you're hired to take or plan to sell photos taken in the park. So basically, if you are a professional photographer, you're leading a trip, or you're taking people out who are shooting, or you're doing weddings, or you're creating and selling stock assets, that means that you have to apply under these rules for a business license. So unlike the commercial where you get a permit, the professional photography, videography section requires you to actually apply for a business license. It's not clear if it's a temporary business license. There is only a link to contact parks in order to get one. I haven't followed up on that process, so I don't know what's entailed as far as getting that business license for engaging in landscape photography or stock or whatever. So I can't tell you whether there's a fee schedule or whether there is an insurance requirement or whether you have to provide detailed location information and dates and all that stuff. It's a challenging thing, and it applies generally across the park. So it's not just when you're out in the wilderness. It's also when you're in the town of Banff, for example. Taking a picture of a hotel for a stock photo would put you into this category. So you do need a business license here, which is problematic, I think. Anyway, those are the 4 categories of rules for people creating content in the park. Now, sort of just to wrap this up, I'm not sure what you think of those. For me, I think you should check them out at the very least. They are fairly ambiguous. It's not always clear that every potential use of the park for photography and videography for money falls within these rules. It's not clear what would happen in the case that you didn't clearly fall through into one of the rules. Sometimes it looks like you might fall into multiple rules. So for example, if you are a landscape photographer who has a social media channel like YouTube or TikTok or whatever, and you're taking landscape photos, posting those videos that you create on YouTube, but then also selling the landscape image on your personal portfolio site, are you then a travel media influencer type rule person, or are you now the professional landscape photographer type person who requires a business license? So super ambiguous. The 15-day rule is, I think, harsh and a bit crazy, especially for landscape or professional photographers, and also for travel media. that's going to be tough, I think, for most people to digest, that 3-week rule. Difficult. The other thing I would say about the rules is that because you're allowed to do many of these activities on a hobby or non-monetary basis, it doesn't seem to me that the rules really work with parks' mandate of protecting animals. Like if you can go out there and do this without putting a photo on your website to sell, and which maybe never sells, but you can do it without doing that, it just doesn't seem to make sense from that perspective. And don't forget, the cost of getting into the park is getting quite expensive now. So it's not like you're not paying to access the park and use the park for those purposes. So anyway, love to hear what you have to say or what you think about these rules. Maybe I'll follow up and get some more information from the Minister of Parks or from my MP or whatever to see what they think about this stuff. Anyway, hope you got something out of this. We'll see you on the next one. Take care.